The train pulled into the depot at Cutter's Hollow with a scream of steel and a sigh of steam. Noon sun glazed the rails and dust shimmered in the still air. It was August, when the earth baked hard and every footstep kicked up the memory of drought. Crows circled wide above the old stock pens, and the depot roof sagged like a drunkard's spine. Few people came here, fewer still stayed. Willard Dawes leaned against a warped hitching post, hat low against the glare. He wasn't waiting for anyone. Hadn't waited for much of anything in years. His boots were near worn through and the patch on his left sleeve was holding out of spite. He came down to the depot sometimes when he needed not to be at the house, which was too quiet since Mary died and the baby with her, 3 winters ago now. That kind of silence swelled, filled rooms, and pressed a man from inside his own ribs. The depot agent, Briggs, shuffled down the platform like he had something to prove. Behind him, off the rear car, stepped a woman not easy to miss. She was large, not just tall but broad and soft, dressed in faded gingham tight across her arms and hips. Her hair was pinned up but already coming loose in the wind, and her face was flushed from travel. She looked around with a quiet sort of expectation, holding a small leather case and a tin lunchbox. No one came for her. Briggs scratched his neck, then walked over to Willard. "Mail-order girl, come all the way from St. Louis, fella what sent for her never showed." Willard glanced at her. How long she been waitin'? Since Tuesday, said he was called Hank something, supposed to meet her here, marry her soon as she stepped off. Told her she was his dream and she'd never want again. Then nothing. Willard squinted at the woman again. Her cheeks were red but her eyes stayed still, not crying, not searching anymore, just still. "Too fat," Briggs muttered, barely above his breath. Bet he saw her and backed out. Willard didn't answer that. He watched the woman sit down on the bench, lunchbox in her lap. She opened it, closed it, then held it like something precious, like it might hum if she listened close. Her ankles were swollen, and the hem of her dress was stained from the train steps. Briggs snorted. Got no place to go. She don't talk much, just sits there every day like she's waitin' for someone to fix it. Willard turned and walked toward her. He hadn't meant to. He meant to go home, feed the chickens, sit at the table that still held Mary's embroidery hoop like she might come back for it. But his feet moved, and then he was in front of her. "You hungry?" She looked up slow. Her eyes were a muddy green, ringed dark with travel and too little sleep. She didn't speak. "I got a wagon," he said. "Bit of bread and bacon left, not warm, but it's food." She stared at him for a moment, then nodded once. Not fast, not desperate, just nodded like she was agreeing to something much larger than food. They didn't talk on the ride. She held that lunchbox in her lap like it might save her. He drove with one hand and chewed tobacco. The fields rolled out flat, sunburnt and dead, save for the stubborn weeds that choked the fence posts. It was a lonely road, worn by wagons, hard on bones. When they reached his place, she paused on the porch before going inside. The door creaked, hinges old and dry. The air smelled of ash and dirt. She stepped in like someone entering a church, careful and slow. He gave her the bacon and bread. She ate with small bites, hands shaking once, then steadying. "You got a name?" he asked. "Letty," she said. He nodded. "I'm Willard." She looked around the one-room cabin, eyes settling on a broken cradle tucked against the far wall. She didn't ask. She didn't mention the woman's bonnet still hanging near the stove. After supper, he sat on the porch and smoked. She sat beside him. "You still plannin' to get married?" he asked, the words stiff on his tongue. Her eyes stayed on the horizon. "Don't matter what I plan, ain't got nowhere to go." He studied her profile, the round of her face, the way she kept her shoulders braced like waiting for insult. She was not beautiful in the way men in Cutter's Hollow whispered about, but there was something honest in her silence. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She was simply enduring. "You want a place to stay," he said. She looked at him then, the first real look. "I ain't lookin' for charity." "I ain't offerin' it," he said. They sat a long while watching the dusk bleed across the sky. Cattle lowed in the distance. Coyotes called from the ridge. She never smiled, but she didn't flinch when he said, "I reckon I'll marry you if you'll have me. No church, not yet, just speakin' it, meanin' it." Letty's lips parted, then closed. "Why?" she asked finally. He didn't answer right off, then said, "House is too quiet, works too much. Ain't no one common for either of us." And that was the truth of it. She nodded once. They spoke their vows under the stars, with no preacher, no guests. Just two souls left over from someone else's tragedy, trying to make a life from the pieces. She slept in the bed, he took the floor. The house stayed quiet but not hollow. In the morning she swept the porch. He watched her and something in his chest shifted, slow as thawing ground. Not love, not yet, but something moved. And that was the beginning. The days that followed were wordless but thick with the weight of new arrangements. Letty rose early, before Willard most mornings, and moved through the house like she belonged, though she never claimed it. She cleaned without being asked, boiled water with the precision of a nurse, and patched what could be patched: curtains, collars, a threadbare saddlebag. She didn't smile, didn't hum, but her hands were steady, and she never left a task unfinished. Willard watched her from the edges of his routine. There was something in the way she kept her eyes low but never downcast, something in her silence that felt earned. He found himself fixing the roof one morning, then clearing out the broken cradle. He didn't say why. She didn't ask. He gave her the north corner of the garden. She planted root vegetables in rows so straight he felt ashamed of the rest. When he passed behind her on the third day, he noticed the thick sweat on her back and how her shoulders tensed, not from work, but from proximity. She wasn't scared of labor, she was scared of men. That night he stayed outside longer than usual. The moon was pale and high, and he smoked until the cold bit into his fingers. When he came inside, Letty was seated in the rocking chair, darning socks by oil lamp. "I won't touch you," he said. She didn't look up, not afraid of being touched. He didn't press her, just nodded and took to the floor again, coat rolled under his head. But her words stayed with him, carved sharp in the dark. By the second week, the town had taken notice. Willard hadn't been seen with a woman since Mary, and no one remembered Mary much anymore, just the way she died, blood on her legs, no midwife quick enough to save her. People said the house was cursed, said Willard was touched by bad luck. Now he was seen at the dry goods store, quiet as ever, but with a sack of flour and 2 bars of soap instead of one. When asked, he said only, "She's called Letty." He didn't offer more. That Sunday, the pastor rode out to their place without invitation. He brought a Bible, 2 biscuits, and a thin smile. "Heard you married on the wind," the pastor said, seated stiff in Willard's only good chair. "We did," Letty said. The pastor glanced at her hands, resting firm on her lap. "No church." "Not then," Willard answered. "A vow without God is a thin thing," the pastor said. Willard's jaw tensed. God weren't the one abandoned at the depot. The pastor left soon after, said he'd return next month for a blessing proper. Letty watched him go, then returned to slicing turnips. She made stew that night. They ate in quiet. Halfway through, she said, "You believe in curses." He shook his head. "I believe in choices." She nodded like that answered something unspoken. Weeks passed. Rain came once, heavy and short. Letty laughed when it struck the roof, just once, and it caught Willard so off guard he dropped the lantern. Her laugh wasn't pretty. It was raw, throaty, like something dragged up from long disuse. They were not in love, not yet, but they were in something. Then the letter came. It arrived in town, addressed to Miss Letitia Rose, care of Cutter's Hollow Depot. The postmaster remembered her and sent a boy riding to the farm. Willard handed her the envelope without a word. She read it slow, her lips moved, her face didn't. After she folded it once, then again, and put it in the tin lunchbox where she kept her other things: a chipped hairbrush, a yellowed photograph, and a pair of worn gloves that looked too small. "Who?" Willard asked. She took a long breath. "He's dead." "The man who left you." She nodded, shot himself. Says in the letter he had debts, said I was better off. Willard waited. "He never saw me," she said. "We only wrote. I told him my measurements. I never lied. He said he didn't mind." Her voice thinned. "Guess he did." That night she stood beside the bed instead of taking it. Willard didn't move. "I don't want to be pitied," she said. "You're not," he replied. She climbed into the bed then, facing the wall, and he stayed on the floor. But the air between them changed. It carried less weight. That winter they got snow early, the kind that sticks for days and freezes the pump handle. Willard caught his hand on the axe-splitting wood and Letty stitched it up without a flinch. Her fingers moved quick and her mouth pressed thin, and when it was done, she said, "You need a better axe." "I need better hands," he said. She looked at them. "These'll do." It was the closest she came to kindness. He remembered it for days. Late January, Willard found her standing out in the orchard. The trees were black bones against the snow, and she had a shawl pulled tight around her. She wasn't moving, just staring west. "You thinkin' of leaving?" he asked. She didn't look at him. "No, I'm thinkin' of staying." He stood beside her, silent, until the cold pushed them back inside. They didn't touch still, but something in the house had shifted. She left her hair down more often. He stopped stepping around her as if she might break. They moved in tandem now, shared breath, shared silence. The kind only made by people who knew how it felt to lose everything. In early spring, a drifter came down from the north with a broken wagon wheel and a slick grin. Said his name was Harp, asked to stay a few nights. Willard let him. Letty didn't trust him. "His hands are too clean," she said. That second night, Harp tried the door to their room. Willard heard it first. Letty had the knife in hand before he did. Harp left the next morning, limping, bleeding from a shallow gash across his palm. He didn't look back. That night, Willard stood at the threshold of the bedroom, and Letty looked up from her side of the bed. Her face was hard, not frightened. "You ever kill a man?" she asked. "No," he said, "but I've thought on it." She nodded. "Me too." They didn't speak again. He laid beside her for the first time. Neither of them reached for the other, but the warmth between them was no accident. Spring came, and with it, the past. The letter came folded in a stranger's hand, sealed with wax the color of dried blood. It arrived with a trader hauling salt pork and blackstrap molasses from Texas. He said a woman in Cedar Rock paid him $2 to deliver it in person, and that she gave no name. Willard took the letter and watched the man ride off, mule cart creaking into the heat-hazed hills. Letty stood behind him in the doorway, apron stained with gooseberries from the morning's baking. She didn't ask what it was, and he didn't open it right away. He tucked it under the mantel clock, let it sit 3 days, maybe 4, but even silence grows heavy if you leave it too long. When he finally opened it, the words were scrawled like someone writing against time. "Your bride is who you think she is. Ask about Virginia. Ask about the girl buried in the orchard. Ask her what happened when the fire came." He read it twice, then again, and the third time he read it aloud. Letty didn't blink. She sat at the table sewing a button onto one of his old shirts. When he finished, she set the needle down and said, "I was 16. The girl buried in the orchard was my sister. The fire came because our stepfather locked the door and lit a match." The words were flat, no shake, no shame. "He drank hard," she said. "Worse when Mama died, kept us penned up like stock. He had hands that never forgot to punish. He touched my sister one night. She was 12. I told him if he touched her again, I'd kill him." He laughed. Willard's hands tightened on the letter. He said nothing. "One morning he left the stove lit and blocked the door with a beam, wanted to burn us in our sleep. I carried Millie through the back window, but she caught her dress. Flames took her legs. She lived 2 more days. Letty's eyes didn't move from the shirt in her lap. "She's buried under a wild plum tree. I planted it myself." "And him?" Willard asked. "I waited. He came home smelling of turpentine and bad luck. I slit his throat and set the house ablaze. I didn't lie to you, Willard. I just never spoke what nobody asked." She went back to sewing. Willard stood at the door a long time that night. He didn't say a word when he finally came to bed, but he laid his hand on her back before sleep took him, and she didn't flinch. The next day he rode to town, found the trader, and asked where the letter had come from. The man shrugged. Some fancy woman with a veil, real proper, smelled like lilac soap, might have come from the east. They burned the letter that night. It was early summer when the cattle started dying. First 1, then 3. No signs of sickness, no bloating or sores, just dead in the morning, legs stiff, eyes rolled. Willard checked the water, the feed, everything. Letty boiled herbs and sprinkled crushed sage across the threshold. "You believe in hexes?" Willard asked. "I believe in spite," she said. The third week he found boot prints in the mud behind the barn. Not his, not hers. They didn't match Harp, either. So he sat up at night with the rifle while Letty slept with a knife under her pillow. She never said she was afraid, just got quieter. Then the hens were killed, all of them. Necks twisted, bodies left in a neat row beside the coop like someone wanted them seen. There were no tracks this time, no trail. The next morning, Willard saddled the mare and rode east. He returned that night with a shotgun and a man named Ezra Pike, who had once tracked a murderer through a pine forest by scent alone. Ezra had a left eye that didn't track and a quiet way of watching that made most folks nervous. "They're watching your place," Ezra said after walking the perimeter. "Real patient, real mad, you kill somebody who don't deserve it." Willard didn't answer. Letty was standing on the porch when Ezra said, "You the one folks whisper about. Burned a man alive and buried your kin in plum roots." "I'm the one still breathing," she said. Ezra grinned. That night they all stayed up. Ezra crouched in the barn, Willard near the well, and Letty on the porch with the rifle across her lap. The moon was a cruel sliver, and the wind smelled like copper. It was past midnight when they heard it. A branch cracking where no tree should be, a breath, a soft scuff of boot on dirt. Ezra moved like smoke, but the figure slipped away. Willard caught a glimpse, black coat, wide shoulders, long hair tied back with string. Not Harp, not someone from Cutter's Hollow. Ezra tracked the trail into the woods, found a piece of cloth snagged on a mesquite thorn, black silk. "Whoever they are, they're hunting slow," he said. "Real slow, like they want fear to grow." Willard sharpened the knives. Letty moved her things into his room. Neither of them commented on it. Ezra stayed a week. On the fifth night, a fire started in the shed. Willard saw it first, flames licking the roofline. He ran for the bucket, but Letty was already throwing dirt. Ezra dragged the barrels out. They saved the house. The shed burned. Inside the ashes, Ezra found a bone. Human, small. "That's not from here," Willard said. "I know," Ezra replied. Letty walked up behind them. "She's trying to scare me." "Who?" Willard asked. Letty stared into the smoke. "My mother's sister, Aunt Alois. She hated me, said I brought rot into the bloodline. She was there when Millie died, said it was God's justice." Ezra spat. "Ain't no justice in a child's pain." Willard reached for her hand. She let him hold it. That night, Letty said, "If it's her, she won't stop. She believes vengeance is holy." Willard asked, "And you?" "I believe in surviving," she said. So they made plans, dug trenches, set up a tripwire that would trigger a rusted dinner bell. Ezra left to bring back someone he called a man who makes things go quiet. Letty packed her lunchbox, and in it she added a small vial of arsenic and a note written in spidery hand. "In case I don't come back." Willard found the note the next day and burned it. They slept beside each other now, not touching much but aware of every breath the other took. Summer thickened, the world narrowed. Then one morning Letty found a dead bird on the steps. Its eyes had been cut out, its wings folded neat, and in its beak was a lock of her hair. She didn't scream, she didn't speak, but her mouth set in a way that made Willard load the rifle with slugs meant for more than game. "She's near," Letty said. And they waited. Ezra returned at dusk with a man who said nothing, but moved like a butcher at closing hour, methodical, silent, eyes sharp as broken glass. His name was Malcolm, and he carried a satchel of iron tools and 2 guns he cleaned before speaking. "She's not a drifter," Malcolm said after Letty described the woman who might be her aunt. "She's prepared. The way she moves, she's waited a long time to hurt you." Letty didn't flinch. She sat on the porch sharpening her knife, the same one she'd used on her stepfather years ago. "She believes blood redeems blood," she said, "that I'm a curse made flesh." Willard looked at her across the dusk. "You believe that?" She didn't answer. The days shortened, heat pressing down like a punishment. No more birds sang near the house. One morning the well rope snapped clean through, and a foul stench rose from the bucket. Malcolm pulled it up to find a dead hare wrapped in black fabric, its mouth sewn shut with horsehair. "She's toying with us," Ezra said, "but she's getting closer." Malcolm built a snare in the west field. Ezra planted nails upright beneath the windows. Willard locked the barn from inside every night. Letty boiled lye and left a jug near the door. She wore the knife now, always, under her apron, against her thigh. On the seventh night, they heard the bell. Not a full ring, just a rusted clatter, like fingers brushing it on purpose. Willard ran for the porch. Ezra shouted from the back of the house. Malcolm was already gone. Letty stood in the doorway, rifle raised. The moon was bone-white above the fields and the trees barely moved, but Willard saw it. A figure in black just past the fence line, standing still, watching. Malcolm emerged from the grass behind her. A gunshot cracked. The figure fell. They ran. It was Aunt Alois. It was a boy, maybe 17, dead before he hit the ground. In his pocket, a letter. She says you murdered her blood, says you killed a child. I came to see if it was true. Letty held the letter like it burned. I didn't know him, she whispered. Willard touched her shoulder. She shook him off. I keep bringing it back, she said, more to herself. No matter where I go, it comes with me. They buried the boy behind the orchard. Malcolm cleaned his gun. Ezra sat by the fire and didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, she's using others to get close. That means she's scared. Or patient, Letty said. 3 nights later, they found the dog gutted on the porch. Not killed quick. Its eyes were open. Letty said nothing. She took off her apron, washed her hands, and went into the barn. Willard followed. He found her sitting beside the hay pile, a bundle of cloth in her lap. She's not coming for just me, Letty said. She'll come for you too. She'll fail. Letty looked up. You're not afraid. I'm tired, he said. She gave a thin, grim smile. Same thing. That night they made a choice. They wouldn't wait. Malcolm, Ezra, Willard, and Letty rode at dawn. No letters, no map, just what Malcolm pieced together from the boys' pockets, scraps of newspaper, half a name, and a trail through dry canyon known only to smugglers and ghosts. They rode in silence. By noon they came across a shack with smoke thin as silk rising from the chimney, a rocking chair on the porch, a woman seated there, sewing. She looked up when they approached. Her eyes were pale and empty, skin waxen, hair pinned beneath a black bonnet. Aunt Alois, Letty said. The woman smiled like a knife. Took you long enough. Ezra dismounted first. Malcolm stayed back watching the shadows. Alois didn't rise, just sewed. You sent the boy, Letty said. You scared the cattle, poisoned the well. I only wanted you to feel what Millie felt, Alois said. Fire and bone, you brought ruin, Letitia, you always did. He loved Millie, you took her from him. She was dying, Letty said. She begged me to end it. She said the pain was worse than the fire. Willard turned toward her, but she kept her eyes on Alois. She asked me, Letty said again. So I did. I gave her laudanum and held her hand. Alois stood. She was 12. She was screaming. A silence thicker than heat fell. Then Alois reached for something beside the chair. Malcolm shot her clean through the chest. She staggered, looked down at the hole, sat back down, smiled blood. You'll rot the same, she said. Then she died. They burned the shack. Letty didn't cry. She watched the flames until her eyes watered and her face gleamed with sweat and ash. On the ride home, no one spoke, not even Ezra. Back at the farm, the house was still standing. The air felt lighter. The hens didn't return, but the wind stopped smelling of iron. Letty went to the orchard alone. She knelt at the tree where Millie was buried and whispered something too quiet to hear. Willard waited by the porch. When she came back, she looked older, but not broken. Inside, she put away the knife. They lay down together that night, no space between. Neither of them dreamed. The next morning, rain came. Real rain, steady, soft, washing months of dust from the windows and roof. Letty opened every door and let it in. They ate together. They laughed once, short, surprised, real. Ezra rode off that afternoon. Malcolm said nothing, just tipped his hat and vanished like a shadow fading at noon. By evening, it was just them. Willard looked across the table. "We still married." Letty nodded, more now than ever. And they sat like that, two people who had survived every fire, every silence, every unspoken name. Still standing, still together, but not done yet. Summer settled heavy, wet and green, the kind of season that makes old wounds ache and everything forgotten rise to the surface. The farm bore it all in silence, split boards, creaking porch, a patchy garden that refused to die. Letty and Willard moved through it with a rhythm carved from survival, not love, not yet, but something near to it, something with roots. They never spoke of Aunt Alois again. Her name didn't pass their lips, but sometimes Letty would stand too long near the fire, her gaze fixed on the flames like a dare. Willard didn't ask what she saw. He'd learned some grief grows best in the dark. Word spread slow through Cutter's Hollow, whispers of the fire in Dry Canyon, of strange folk coming and not returning, of Willard Dawes and the fat woman he married who now walked with a straight back and a sharper eye. The townsfolk stopped calling her that one from the depot. Now they called her Mrs. Dawes, and they said it soft. When the preacher came back, he found them outside hoeing rows for fall vegetables. He carried a Bible, a ribbon of white linen, and an awkward apology folded behind his teeth. "I didn't know what you carried," he said. Letty looked him over. "Neither did I." They let him bless the house, not for God's sake but their own. That night she lay beside Willard and whispered, "I ain't good." He didn't reply right away. Then, "Neither am I." It was the closest they ever came to vows. September brought a girl. She arrived on foot, barefoot, with a jaw like granite and arms thin as switchgrass. 12, maybe. Dirt up to her knees, a scar above one eyebrow like someone had tried to split her open and didn't finish the job. She didn't knock, just stood at the fence and stared. Letty saw her first. "Where's your people?" she asked. The girl said nothing. "Hungry." Still nothing. Letty brought her bread. The girl ate like it hurt. Willard came around from the barn and saw them standing there. One woman, one girl, one moment balanced on a knife point. "She yours?" he asked. "No," Letty said, "but she's stayin'." They made a bed for her in the loft. She didn't give her name, but she didn't run. She watched them like a dog watches wolves, knowing the difference between cruelty and kin. Willard fixed the hinges on the storm cellar. Letty taught the girl to snare rabbits. The girl didn't speak for 12 days. Then, while shelling peas, she said, "I had a brother, he got took." "By who?" Letty asked. The girl shrugged. "Some men," said he owed them for something. Letty didn't press, she only nodded. "They kept her." The town asked questions, but no one pressed. Not after what happened in Dry Canyon. Not after what folks whispered about a woman who survived fire twice and didn't blink at blood. The girl stayed, learned to mend clothes, gut fish, mix lye soap. She had a temper, sharp and fast, but Letty matched it with silence, Willard with calm. One morning, Letty braided the girl's hair and said, "You ain't broken, just bent." The girl didn't cry, she never did, but she leaned into Letty's side for just a breath, just long enough. Years passed like water-carved stone, slow but deep. Willard built another room. Letty learned to laugh sometimes when the girl made a face or tripped over her own gangly feet. She never grew soft, but she grew steady. The land gave what it could, not much, enough. They buried Ezra the second winter. Malcolm vanished for good. The girl, who finally gave her name as Junie, stayed, got taller, meaner with a slingshot, started calling Willard Pa when she thought no one heard. One night when the wind howled just right and the porch rattled like bones, Letty stood outside with a lantern, watching the edge of the dark. "Still think they'll come?" Willard asked. She shook her head. They already did. He wrapped an arm around her. She didn't pull away. In the spring of their 7th year, Letty planted a row of wild plum trees behind the barn, said it was for the bees, but Willard knew better. She placed a small marker at the foot of the tallest one. No name, just a smooth stone and a bundle of dried lavender. "Millie," she said. Willard stood beside her. Junie in the distance, shouting at a mule that wouldn't move. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. They grew old. Not all at once, slowly, in the joints, in the eyes, in the way Willard started needing help lifting feed sacks and Letty took longer to thread a needle. But they lived. No vengeance left, no ghosts, just 3 people trying to make it through one more season, then another. No one came for them. Not anymore. And when Willard died, quietly after supper, still wearing his boots, Letty laid him out in clean linens and buried him beside the first tree they planted together. Junie dug the hole Letty lowered him in. She didn't cry, but she sat there till morning. Years later, when folks passed through Cutter's Hollow and asked about the stone farmhouse with the bees in the orchard that grew thick with fruit, they were told. That was Willard and Letty Dawes' place. He was a widower, she was too big for the man who ordered her, but they built something, real, hard, worth remembering. And sometimes, if they were lucky, Junie would speak up from the porch and say, "They weren't good, not all the way, but they were right, and they never ran." Then she'd go back to shelling beans, sun in her hair, a rifle by the door. Because some places still carry weight. And some women do, too.